with that in mind, the majority of Canadians are the majority of Canadians better off or worse off even after you factor in the rebate?
Well, once you factor in the rebate, but also the economic impacts, based on our modeling, the majority of households will see a negative impact as a result of the carbon tax.
Ladies and gents, welcome back. Canada's annual inflation rate is slowed to 2.8%. This is what we're being told. Of course, we know that the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, the numbers have been flubbed so many times. They keep changing what's in that basket of goods in order to make it look really good. Now, CBC is reporting that it's dropped to 2.8% in February, helped by a deceleration in cost of cellular services, groceries, and internet services, says Stats Canada. Now, go look at your grocery bill and tell me, leave a comment in the comment section down below if your grocery bill has gone down to 2.8% increases compared to the increases that we've been seeing as year over year recently. It is incredibly a different story when you actually just go to the grocery store as opposed to when you listen to the CBC. Now, people in response, of course, we have Tom Thomas here responding, saying their price models are rigged and meaningless. This is the real inflation. The real inflation, of course, is the monetary M1M Statistics Canada money supply. This is how much money is now out there. It is insane how much they have been printing. But this isn't the only thing that's leading to inflationary pressures. Yeah. And I've explained this before, that the carbon tax isn't necessarily inflationary. It's more of a snowball effect. It feels like inflation because prices go up astronomically because you're taxing everything on every single transaction point on the whole supply chain when it comes to food or anything, really, anything out there. The carbon tax is increasingly bringing more price to everything. Again, the snowball effect as this goes forward. Now, they're proposing that they increase the carbon tax on us come April 1st. Happy April Fools for everybody in Canada. Now, I wanted to show this. This is Catherine McKenna, a spokesperson for the carbon tax, having a self-own moment by CBC Watcher here, posting this on Twitter. Amazing how it goes. And this is the partisanship in Ottawa when they say that anything that was proposed by Stephen Harper, for example, doesn't work, but it works when they do it. And I'm totally against if Stephen Harper was proposing this, but let's just have a listen here.
So is it just a communications problem, or is it the program design itself that doesn't resonate? Because people feel the cost increases when they fill up their car on a weekly or every couple of days, but then they only get a rebate once a quarter.
But I mean, that's why you have to talk about it, right? Like, the government has many messages. They're going to have to be very focused on one of their key messages and one of the key policies. No plan. In 2007, Stephen Harper said to an audience in Germany, he said climate change is probably the biggest threat to Canada. That's 2007. Yeah. We are still waiting for a plan. They have no plan.
No, and he proposed a carbon tax of $65 a ton by 2018. The former Prime Minister Stephen Harper did, which is where it is right now, which is what
which has done nothing to reduce emissions. The challenge.
Whoa, it's done nothing to reduce emissions. Why would we increase it more then if it's only serving to damage the lives of Canadians in Canada? It really is detrimental, and this is the real situation. Now, they keep talking about rebate and saying that, oh, well, you know, the cost at the fuel pump and all of these costs, they're going to give you a rebate. I've been talking about this for some time now. The snowball effect. Again, it's the snowball effect of the carbon tax being hit at every transaction point along the entire supply chain, everyone having to pay this carbon tax. It compounds and it makes things way less affordable. Yes, you may get back a little bit from the government for what you pay at the pump, but you're not getting anything back for all the increased prices of everything along the lines. Now, this is a really telling moment at this is one of the Parliamentary Budget Office, and this was, of course, this is the Parliamentary Budget Officer being asked by Andrew Scheer about specifically this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I was hoping that we could have a discussion about the looming carbon tax hike that the Prime Minister is planning for April 1st. You did a comprehensive study of the carbon tax, and but you not only looked at the direct cost, you looked at the total cost. On page 3 of the report, it says household net cost of the federal fuel charge, fiscal and economic impacts. I'm sure there's lots of Canadians that are following this very closely because they know how high prices are and they're afraid of how high they're going to jump April 1st. But can you just explain what that means, fiscal and economic impacts?
So the fiscal impact is the impact of paying the tax directly, for example, filling up the gas tank, gas to heat the home. The indirect costs, so for example, if you buy a service or goods, there's an energy component embedded, plus the GST that's applied to that tax. So that's the fiscal cost. The government sends a check or a rebate. So the fiscal impact is the difference between what you pay, indirect and direct, minus the rebate. And on that front, 80%, we estimate 80% of households get more than what they pay.
So that is what the Liberals are telling people at this point. They're saying that the average Canadian is only going to pay this much in carbon taxes, and then the rebate's going to come in, and up to 80% of them might even get back a little more than that. Now, there's a different story when you talk about the economic picture as a whole and the prices that will increase because of this.
When we also include the economic impacts, that's taking into account the fact that some sectors will be negatively affected by the carbon tax. For example, the transportation sector, the oil and gas sector is an obvious example. They'll be presumably negatively affected by a carbon tax that progressively increases. So when we take also that into account, we find that households will have lower employment in some sectors, lower investment income, and we find that it's the opposite. Once you take into account the fiscal and economic impact, the changes in the economic fabric of the country, that households are seeing a negative impact from the carbon tax when including both the amounts that they pay, but also the economic impact on households.
So in other words, the fiscal impacts are where the tax is applied directly. So when I see that on my fuel bill, when I fill up my car, if I see that on my heating bill, that's the direct cost. And the rebate was only built around capturing that cost. But what you're saying today is that all the other cascading effects of the carbon tax increase will have a cost to Canadians.
Yes, there's an adjustment in the economy that's expected to take place by reducing our use of fossil fuels, and that will have impacts certainly in the short term while the economy adjusts, and that increases costs, for example, of transportation companies, which presumably will have lower profits that they will redistribute less of to shareholders, for example.
And higher costs that get passed on to consumers. So that's a factor too in the economic cost too. It's the indirect kind of cascading effects as a trucker has to pay his share of the carbon tax. That has to be accounted for somewhere. So with either higher prices, as you say, either lower wages or lower profits back to shareholders. Okay. And with that in mind, the majority of Canadians are the majority of Canadians better off or worse off even after you factor in the rebate?
Well, once you factor in the rebate, but also the economic impacts, based on our modeling, the majority of households will see a negative impact as a result of the carbon tax.
That's right. A majority of households will see a negative impact as a result of the carbon taxes. This is not rocket science. It shouldn't be a surprise that we got here. And with this new increase that's happening April 1st, it's going to get even worse. Now, there's not a lot of support for this. Over 70% of Canadians agree that they want to get rid of the carbon tax, get rid of it altogether. And we're having all kinds of premiers coming out, even Liberal premiers saying, no, this is enough. Get rid of this thing.
7 premiers are now calling on Ottawa to cancel the spring increase to the carbon tax.
Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston wrote his own letter to the Prime Minister saying your carbon tax is not the way to accomplish the goals of reducing emissions and increasing renewable energy, and it is not in the best interest of Nova Scotians.
I think they should just get rid of the carbon tax and work with the provinces on something that would actually help.
I think it's time to have a real serious look at this carbon tax and what it has done, what it's doing, and the negative impact it's having.
We think that the carbon tax should be removed on everything for everyone.
Times are hard out there, and putting another 4 cents on gas might not seem like a big thing if you're overlooking the Rideau Canal in Ottawa, but I can promise you in Tyne Valley PEI or Surrey PEI, that is a big thing.
Could achieve a win.
I'll leave the link in the description down below. You can watch this whole video in its entirety. Also, Larry Brock getting on Twitter to give his piece about why this carbon tax it has to go.
Canadians are paying $700 more for food in 2024 than they did last year. But given Justin's background, he just doesn't understand what it's like to struggle financially.
No.
When he taxes the farmer who grows the food and the trucker who ships it, he passes those costs on to you and your families who buy it. Canadians need relief, not more taxes. Nearly 70% of Canadians oppose his latest tax hike, and now 7 premiers, including the Liberal Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, have asked the Liberal government to spike the hike. This week, our Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre will be forcing multiple votes in Parliament to prevent Trudeau's tax hike. We are calling on Liberal and NDP members to listen to their constituents and join them in calling for Trudeau to spike the hike. And I'm calling on constituents of those MPs to contact their offices and express your concerns.
Absolutely. Give your MP a call and say, hey, why would you vote for this thing? And if you aren't, well, let's see you talk a little bit more about it perhaps on social media. Now, these MPs, by the way, at the same time that this increase is happening for the carbon tax, they're all going to be getting an automatic pay raise. That's right. They don't have to vote on their own pay raises. They've already been scheduled. That's right. They make it automatic so that they can turn around to the Canadian people and say, well, I didn't vote for it. It just happened. Well, they could get rid of it. This is something that they've done in the past under Stephen Harper, actually. The federal government is more than $1 trillion in debt. Taxpayers are struggling to afford basic necessities, and MPs don't deserve raises. So this is the perfect time to stop rubber stamping the pay raises politicians give themselves every year, said Franco Terrazzano, CTF federal director. MPs stopped pay raises in the past, and they should stop it this year. The crazy amount of money that these politicians are making, we're talking about a backbench MP's salary being currently at $194,600. A minister collects $287,400, while the prime minister takes home $389,200 in annual salary. They're going to be getting a ton more money, up to $16,000 more. Do you think Trudeau, the guy who says he thinks about quitting his job all the time, does he deserve a raise of $16,000? Has he done that good of a job for Canada? No, none of these guys have, and they're wasteful spending. Of course, this is breaking this morning. Holly Doan saying unnamed Canadian delegate at last UN climate conference booked a $1,800 a night Dubai hotel suite. Delegation led by Environment and Climate Change Minister Stephen Guilbeault cost taxpayers, you guessed it, $1.35 million for a trip to Dubai so they could run around and tell everybody why we need to get off of carbon fuel. This is crazy. And of course, this is all coming back to the one thing that Trudeau paid taxpayer dollars, $500,000 of taxpayers' dollars to the World Economic Forum to get this tickle me into bringing a carbon tax along report from them. The New Nature Economy report justifying this carbon tax was paid for by the Liberal government. This is pointed out by Dr. Leslyn Lewis, MP for the Conservative Party. Anyway, I want to leave this one with you guys. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about all the things I talked about today. About the carbon tax, do you really think that inflation is down in February? Go have a look at what you've been paying for your average things, just your grocery costs, fuel costs, all of these things. Is inflation really down to 2.8%, or do you think they're flubbing the numbers? Leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think. we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.